Good day, everyone. We are the Group 3 and we're presenting Module 3A, Metrical Tales and Romances. But before I go on, let me introduce myself. I am Teacher BC and I am with my colleagues, co-teachers Samuel Elisan and Ma'am Beverly Gomez. So our objective for this topic is at the end of the lesson, the students are expected to discuss the different metrical tales and metrical romances. Second one, analyze the literary pieces under this topic. And last objective will be appreciate the importance of metrical tales and metrical romances. Topic outline, metrical tale, metrical romances, Beowulf, and the Lady of Shalott. First one, metrical tale. So the question for this is, what is metrical tale? A metrical tale is a type of poem that follows a narrative format and includes character, a plot, a setting, and a topic. This sort of composition depicts genuine, apparent, and straightforward storytelling about real or imagined events. Take note the real or imagined events. Next. So let's go to the characteristics of metrical tale. First one, metrical tale is a poetry as a short story is to prose. A narrative told by a known author with characters, setting, plot, and theme. Told or written in first-person view. It details with any emotions or phase of life, and its story is told in a simple, straightforward, and realistic manner. The characters are ordinary people concerned with ordinary events. And the example of this metrical tale is the poem Beowulf. An old English poem Beowulf is disputed in the 700 to 1000 AD. It is written during the 18th and early centuries in England, a heroic poem that ranks as Old English literature's pinnacle achievement and the earliest European vernacular epic. And last, the poem was not published until 1815. It is preserved in the Beowulf manuscript, a single copy dating from around 1000 AD, Cotonemes, Vitalis A15. Here's an example picture of Beowulf fighting. So let's go to metrical romances, and I will give the stage to Teacher Samuel. Teacher Samuel.
All right, thank you, Miss BC. So let's now move on to the metrical romances. So what is metrical romance? A metrical romance is a form of narrative poem that tells a story of valor, gallantry, and adventure. So the other term for metrical romance is chivalric poetry. May I repeat? The other term for metrical romance is chivalric poetry. So they frequently have a sense of mystery and supernatural. From the Middle Ages through the 19th century, this was a popular form of entertainment. When it was gradually superseded by prose romance, which had already established itself in the previous century. Although some metrical romances do, and they aren't required to maintain a consistent rhyme or meter. So the characteristics of metrical romances or the chivalric poetry has 7. Firstly, we have the first characteristics of metrical romance called romantic poetry or medieval romance. Second, we have dominant poetry poetic form rather among the royalty, nobility, wealthy landowners during the Renaissance period. Next, chivalry, love, and supernatural creatures like fairies, dragons, and wizards are the dominant themes. Next, we have, despite the name, it does not always include love story, so romances. Next, we have, if a metrical tale is simply a story in verse, on the other hand, metrical romance is a heroic story in verse and almost always have a happy ending. So metrical romances doesn't always have it doesn't always end in a very mysterious or awful way, but almost always have a happy ending. And lastly, it focuses on the hero of the story and his or her excellent moral character. So one example of metrical romance is the story of the Lady of Shalott or the Lady of Shalott. All right. So it is the most popular metrical romances. It was written by um, yeah, it was the most popular metrical romances, example of metrical romances, The Lady of Shalott. It is a lyrical ballad by the 19th century English poet, Mr. Alfred Lord Tennyson. It is inspired by the 13th century short prose text, Donna di Scolata. So it tells the tragic story of Elaine of Astolat, a young noble woman stranded in a tower up the river of Camelot. So yeah, the brief background or history about this story is it was published 1842 by Tennyson, as I have mentioned, Tennyson, Alfred Lord. So, and the other example of metrical romance is the same author with the story of Lady of Shalott. It was also written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. So the story of Idols of the King. So the Idols of the King is a narrative cycle of 12 poems composed by English poet, as I mentioned, Alfred Tennyson in 1859. And the poem recount the legend of King Arthur, his farmed knights, and the tragic love affair with Guinevere, and the rise and fall of this kingdom. All right, so the example, may I repeat, the example of metrical romances are The Lady of Shalott and The Idols of the King, written by Alfred Lord Tennyson. So the next presenter is Miss Beverly Gomez to give us an more examples of metrical tales and metrical romances.
Okay, so thank you for that, teacher Samuel. So now let's proceed to more examples of metrical tales and romances stories. So as you can see, there are a lot of stories regarding metrical tales and romances. So the first one is Dale's Scale by Dale McKaylee. Next one, Can a Lady Love This Mister by James McLean. Next, In the Garden by Lena Carter. Next one, A Soft Silky Breeze by Ken Allen Dransfield. And Don't by Muyeso Amboga. In His Last Breath by Shardul Sen Hadav. Okay, so next one is A Gardener to Greens by Anirudha Pathak. Next one is Morning Star by Susan Woodrow. Witches and More Wood by Marcella Proust. Magnificent Madness by Susan Woodrow. The Words You Spout by Michael Husman. Under the Breath of the Cursed by Ken Allen Dronsfield. Okay, so here are more examples. A Silent Rush of Cold by Ken Allen Dronsfield. Felt by Forgotten by Zoe Tenenbaum. All Abroad by Nina De Sangre. Paradise Lost by John Milton. The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Coleridge. Sonnets from the Portuguese by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The Emigrants by Charlotte Turner. And lastly, The Corsair by George Gordon Byron or Lord Byron. So those are the examples of other examples of metrical tales and romances stories. So now let's proceed to the genres of the given metrical tales and romances. Okay, so for our metrical tales, the example is Beowulf. So when we say Beowulf, it is a heroic epic, a long poem, but adventures about the adventures of a great warrior. So the warrior protagonist of a heroic epic serves as a moral model, and his story can be utilized to evaluate the value of a meaning of a society's ethical code. So when we say Beowulf, it is also an elegy because it laments the death of a heroic set of beliefs that may or may not have been tragically misguided in the first place. So next one is for metrical romances, and the given example is the Lady of Shalott. So in with this, in here as a representative of death, the poem narrates the tragic story of a lady who is imprisoned on an island. So everything around her is gloomy and colorless. She is not allowed to look outside through the window. Rather, she sees the outside world through a mirror. um, to her, reality is confined to the images she perceives through that mirror. So the poem also provides a detailed description of the place around her and her and the movement of people in the Camelot. So one day, she sees a knight coming from the fields of barley. He grabs he grabs her attention and she sees the Camelot. So through the window, as a punishment, she writes her name on the boat, sings her last song, and then she dies. So those that are the genres of Beowulf and Lady Shalott. So next one is other genres of metrical tales and romances. As you can see, there are four other genres. The first one is the story of adventure. So for the adventure genre, it consists of books where the protagonist goes on an epic journey, either personally or geographically. So the next one is love or what we call romance. So in romance genre, it is a popular category of books that consistently churns out bestsellers books. So the aim of this genre is simple, as you can see from the word love, the showcasing a love story for two people to overcome adversity to obtain their happily ever after. So the third one is chivalry, or what we call a literary genre of high culture. It is a heroic romance or chivalric romance is a type of prose and verse narrative that was popular in noble courts of high medieval and early modern Europe. So the last one is the deeds of daring do. So it calls daring do or literary a daring spirit or deed. So it is a boldness or a bold action stories. So that will be all for the genres of metrical tales and romances. Okay, so for our conclusion part, metrical poetry is a poetry that has a meter. So it has a recognizable pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. And here are the references that we use in researching for our topic. And that will be all. Thank you.